right. Hello, Steph. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, great to see you also.
Yeah. So tell me, how are you and how was your weekend?
Doing good so far. Been just preparing for our psychological aid mission. We'll at the Empath team will be going to Surigao and we'll be providing psychological aid for natural disaster victims there.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's wonderful. I hope you have a safe trip out there. And
Yes,
for
thank
those
you.
listening, again, today we have the pleasure of speaking to Steph Naval, who's the founder and CEO of Empath. Steph is a mental health advocate and, of course, founder and CEO of Empath, which is a social enterprise that envisions accessible mental health care and psychoeducation for everyone in the Philippines and beyond. So we're going to get a chance to hear some of her story and learn a little bit more about Empath and the great work that they're doing. So, Steph, before we dive into learning more about Empath and even this psychological, mission
Yes.
trip that you're taking, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to talk more about that in a little bit. But before we do that, tell us more about you, Steph. Steph, saan ka lumaki? Saan ka pinanganak? Saan ka lumaki? Tell us about your family. Like, who are you?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Hi, I'm Steph. I've been born and raised here in the Philippines, Manila, Philippines, since for the longest time. And I'm 24 years old also. And I started Empath when I was
24
23.
years young. Amazing.
Yeah, started Empath when I was 23. It was really inspired because of my personal mental health struggles. So I started manifesting mental health concerns when I was 14 years old. So that was around early high school. And it unfortunately exacerbated and got worse. And because of how difficult the mental health care system is in the Philippines, it I think added more to the trauma. Like I had to go through five different psychologists or psychiatrists. I finally got it right on the fifth one. Some would be really overpriced, some would be really, in a sense, cheap. But then it wasn't a real psychologist. So instances like that,
Ano
very
ibig mo
difficult.
sabihin hindi real psychologist?
Yeah, as in not licensed. Um,
Oh.
yeah, but then I thought it was licensed person. So very
Mm,
misleading. So no wonder it was so cheap, quote unquote. So be careful for those who have really
wow.
cheap quote unquote psychologists or therapists because they might not necessarily be legitimate, for example. So and no wonder it wasn't working for the longest time. I've been having that person for a year and nothing really amounted to it. I'd be prescribed all these medications for a whole year. But then yes, so that was the case. So horror stories like that. And it was because of these difficulties and these horror stories and how difficult it was to navigate through the healthcare system. I really wanted to establish Empath. We try to aim for quality and reliable mental health care. Reliability also, that means we screen our mental health professionals and we do background checks and everything just to make sure that they're all good. Whether it comes to efficiency also, I learned that it's also very inefficient with the mental health care system here, the way it functions, the way it operates. I think because it's very new, it's still in its baby stages. So efficiency and urgency is also something we strive for, and also excellence, just trying our best and being diligent, all for the benefit of serving others and doing our best in terms of serving that. So that's generally why I got into Empath and really advocate for it, because I'm hoping that not just me, but other Filipinos will be able to benefit the same way, because everyone deserves really great and quality mental health care.
I agree. I am still mind blown by the fact that you were with this person for a year.
Yeah.
And they weren't actually licensed.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How did you? I'm just curious now. Like, how did you find out that eventually, right? That okay, this person is maybe not the professional I thought they were.
Yeah. For me, it was I was in the ER, and then they asked, "Oh, who's your like psychiatrist, for example? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, no, who's your psychiatrist? Diba? She's not the psychiatrist, at least not yet, this person. Like, this person was not licensed yet, like, or hasn't taken that board, whatever, and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so like, but I'm surprised, like, no, who's the year and all. So it was one of the another person in the ER who had to correct me, like, oh no, she's not. Like, what? So yeah, so who's your psychiatrist? Like, didn't meet anybody else. So like, yeah, so it was quite misleading. So no wonder it was like 500 pesos lang. So yeah, compared to how it's usually rate, like 3,000 pesos, for example. So
wow. And how did your parents? I'm just curious. How did your parents respond? Like walking you through all of this, all of the medical appointments and this process.
I think
that's that for your family.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to ask, because I think a lot of people don't realize how heavy it is in the family. Like, sure, it's understandable that everything centers around the person who's suffering from it, but it's another feat and a very unique quite of difficulty when it comes to the family. One of the reasons why in Empath, we also have family therapy and something that's called case conferences. So not necessarily family therapy, but you can approach a psychologist or any psychiatrist to be able to consult about how to go around like the person with a mental health condition. So that's in a much more affordable rate than family therapy, because it's not full-on therapy. It's really just more of consultation, how we can go about it, how we can be best of assistance to the person, emotional support, because it is really heavy. And that's why we also advocate psychoeducation. So that's like we try to produce as much of free psychoeducation. So it's more of like mental health 101, basics about mental health. So for families, parents, teachers, siblings who need to be of assistance to someone suffering through a mental health concern can learn about it for free. So we try to put it on our social media, our Instagram, our Facebook. So, and yeah, we've been getting messages about people said, thank you so much for your post. Like, this actually helped me go through a difficult time, or really learned how to help support people who have difficulties. So that's one of our main advocacies as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And what has what would you say your family has learned through your own like personal experiences in the past?
Yeah. Well, one, get the right psychologist and psychiatrist, do background checks also. So like when I got the fifth one, it was a recommendation. My mom attended the webinar, and then of the psychologist, really love her. And then she she asked around about her, double checked and everything. So I think she really learned that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. As in, like, don't give up on the situation. Like, really, my mom prayed a lot for me, for sure. I think she would have this prayer for healing. In terms of healing, she prayed a lot. And then, yeah, here I am. And then I have to admit, when I was in my very dark phase, I was this is talking about a more spiritual aspect. Like I was very spiteful because of all these things that were happening to me and towards God, for sure. And I think after that, I was very spiteful. It's like, why are these things happening to me and everything? But my mom prayed for me a lot. And I honestly think it's also through the little miracles, through God's grace, that I was able to get through a lot of things. And then, now my relationship with God is a lot healthier. I'm starting to realize, honestly, He really guided me through this, like through the instrument of proper healthcare and everything. So, and then my mom is just really proud, and my family is just really happy for me that through this struggle and difficulty, that I didn't let it define me or overwhelm me in the sense, or let it win in that sense, but make something out of it. Like from something that I quote unquote found my weakest or most thing that I'm ashamed of or something, I preach it out and like, hey, I went through this, and like, so what? In a sense, I went through this. But it was through this experience, it propelled me to help others and to provide that same service to others, to those who are in need. And now I'm proud that, I can go on national television because I remember telling Christina, I was on CNN, like I can say, I struggle with mental health struggles, and that's totally okay. Now, like, at let's say 24 years old, I'm running a company to be able to serve others who are going through the same thing. So Yeah, that's how my parents are extremely proud. And then my mom is like, thank you so much, Lord. So like, because it was really low, it was really bad. But then at the end of the day, there's really hope, and just don't give up, and you'll get there. Like eventually you get there. Just don't give up, for sure.
Wow. And today, yeah, what would you say to your parents that maybe, looking back?
Yeah, I honestly just say thank you so much for never giving up on me. And like there's no words can really describe how much I'm so grateful for them. Like I remember before at the start, they did not believe at all. Like there was still that stigma. My dad kept on saying, "No, it's just all in your mind," or like he'd say comments like that, and then parang, oh, you just have to think happy thoughts, like those things. They
Kind
were
of
very
like power
dismissive.
through it.
Yeah, like just you just don't think about those things. Like they really were
Mm.
dismissive. It was a total 180 of everything. I think their breaking point was when they saw me in the ER, and then they had to have a um psychologist or a professional tell them, hey, this is a real thing. And I think that shocked them a lot. So for sure it was heavy. It was the shock. And then eventually it's a lifestyle they get used to. And yeah, from there now they're great advocates. Like my dad tells all his friends about it. And then like in the sense na, hey, yeah, my daughter advocates for mental health. And then he has friends who open up to him about their mental health concerns, and these are older men, huh? And then like, and or if their children are going through the same thing. And sometimes I talk to their children also. So
Wow.
and that gives them hope. How did they go through it? I remember there was one person after the CNN feature. He was an older guy, quite older. It's I think why I emphasize on older and men. It's because that's the demographic that are least accepting to mental health. Most like because of the masculine type of like, oh, you need to be strong, you can't have emotions type of thing. Plus, it's the older generation. So super interesting. And then this person approached me and saying, like, oh yes, my daughter is going through difficult things and it's really heavy. So he was asking parang how my experience was and about it. And I just told them, honestly, just don't lose hope and just don't give up. Like it will happen for sure if you as long as you don't give up. And then he just gave me a big hug after it and a sigh of relief that okay, everything's gonna be okay. Like I'll just invest in my daughter and trust the proper mental health care she will receive. So that was very heartwarming, I have to admit.
That is wonderful. And of course you have siblings as well.
Yeah.
How's your relationship with your siblings now? And how is it for them, or you all as siblings going through this process?
For my siblings, it was heavy, like especially for the youngest one who didn't understand what was going on at the time growing up. So like she's quite young when I started manifesting these disorders. And then I remember, I think the feeling like what was painful for them was the feeling of helplessness, and they just felt useless in the situation. And I think that's a common experience that a lot of families don't talk about because it's so taboo. It's even heavier in the family because they have no one to talk about it. So, for example, if someone passes away, find grief, processing grief is a lot easier if you're able to talk to someone about it. People are able to comfort you about it. Or if someone is diagnosed with cancer, the family is able to get sympathy or like support and everything. But when someone is diagnosed with bipolarity or like with depression, they're like shocks. Okay, we can't tell anyone. So it kind of builds up and makes it worse. Like they're ending up to bottle it up and everything. So that was the difficult aspect of it. I think these are unforeseen sufferings or difficulties that people don't recognize with families who have person suffering from a mental health concern. So it was difficult at the start and it was so toxic, our relationship, admittedly. But because of proper family therapy and case conference consultations and just educating my siblings about, okay, when Ate goes through this episode, this is how we can help her out for it. Like first aid, technically. That's why in Empath, we also advocate for that, like mental health first aid. So yeah, and then now it's really great. As in, I remember before, okay, this is again get quite personal. So I remember my younger sister before, she like everyone in my family did not like me as in at all. Like it was that type of toxic relationship. But then now, my sister, when they ask him who's the person that you look up to, says, "Oh, it's Ate Steph," for example. So
That
it
is
was a one. It was a
sweet.
180. Yeah, it was a
Wow.
180. And honestly, without that's why I super advocate for proper mental health care, because that would have not happened with that as an instrument of God's grace.
Wow.
So
And
yeah.
family therapy. Tell us a little bit about that, like your experience with that as a family.
Yeah, it was a bit. Oh, we're quite a lot. So it was in pieces of people. So sometimes it was just my parents, and then Doctora would like talk to my siblings, for example. So it's to each its own every time. And honestly, if done right, it's really a great investment. Like there should
Yeah.
imagine like it's kind of sad how people avoid doing that, like, oh, because I'm ashamed to ask for help for the family. That means like as a parent you feel like you failed or you feel guilty. But no, it's the remedies and steps. Like no family is perfect, and really like it shows strength and courage and your initiative and investment to the fact that you want to bring your family into this whole process. So very important, the family support through going difficult times like this.
That's so good. That is so good. And to see the redemption of that dark situation that you all were going through. You said toxic at one point, and to see your relationship as a family grow even stronger through that. And
yeah, it's really great right now. Really love my family.
God is good. God is good. And so, again, you were in your teens, right? When
Yeah.
when you were first manifesting, the mental health disorder, and then eventually you went to college, as well. Tell us, okay, just give us that timeline of teens. Then you got proper, mental health care at some point later down the line, and then where'd you go to school, and then what happened after that?
Oh, actually, to clarify, I only got proper mental health care when I was third year college. So it really prolonged from 14 years old all the way to third year college. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
It was that long. The battle was that long. And then um, for yeah, it was that long. I went to college at Ateneo de Manila University. They were quite supportive with mental health compared to all the other universities that I heard of at least.
Yeah.
They would be accepting with mental health conditions. They had protocols. They were very supportive. I think my parents were also impressed of how accepting they were, at least from my experience. How accepting they were, how mindful they are. Because I know they have like hidden protocols actually when they are being mindful of a student who showed symptoms. Like teachers go through training for it and everything.
Wow.
So yeah, so which is good. Like it's not perfect
That
for
is.
sure, but then it's a good step there. Like it's a very progressive step that they take care. Because I remember before, even in other countries, like they can take mental health leaves. I remember there was a prof that says, honestly, if you need to cut, take a sanity cut. Like sometimes you just need those. So yeah, so I really appreciated that prof also.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really great.
So Ateneo, and then you graduated.
Yeah.
And then it was pretty much empath shortly after.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that transition, and then, reaching that aha moment of, I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I remember it was actually because I had an anxiety attack in the middle of school. So actually in the process of college,
Wow.
there were quite a number of times I was rushed to the ER because of incidents. So so because of a lot of incidents, and then I think there was one, but it was manageable at the end. But then I think I was just tired of how the Philippine mental health care system is also difficult. And then one day in my condo, in my college dorm or college condo, I think, you know what? I wanna I want to start something that can address all these, like, well, not for sure everything, but as much as possible, all these mental health care system issues. And then I was strategizing based on my strengths. Because I could have made a foundation, I could have made a nonprofit, I could have tried these, I could have joined one. But I noticed that there are still gaps that these things were not addressing yet. And at the same time, my strengths and assets were really in business and entrepreneurship. So, and I preferred the company and startup type of route. Like that was business is something I'm very familiar with it because my family is into business also. My dad has like a few companies, also my grandfather. And yeah, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. Like, at first I was going to wait, actually. I was going to wait for a few years till I got older. But then I think what hit me that no, I think this is something that should be started now was because of the pandemic. Because there was so many cases that brought up from 3.6 million 2020. Now it's at least 17 million already that were reported. So
reported, what is that? Mental health?
In the Philippines, yes.
Philippines.
So
Wow.
2020, it was 3.6 million. 2 years in the pandemic, 2022, recent report, I think around March, it's now at least 17 million. So wow. Yeah, it really spiked up and there's an urgent need. So this was something, okay, I don't think I can wait for this. Like, so that's how that really actually pushed me to start. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this now. So yeah. Yes.
Amazing. So what take us back to those early days. What was the first thing that you did when you made that commitment? Okay, I'm going to do this. And what did you do next?
Yeah, I consulted a psychologist. I consulted a lot of mental health professionals. So it's like first it was to tell, it was funny. First thing when it hit me, I called my friend who was the boyfriend of my roommate or something because my roommate was busy because my roommate was the reason why I started. She's a psych major and she's become a psychologist. She's the one who told me that, hey, maybe it's okay to try to get some help, to reach out. She's the one who's helped me through a lot of process. So her boyfriend was the one who was available. I was going to tell my roommate, but it was her boyfriend that was available. So it's like, okay, Jack. I was like, Jack, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a mental health company. And he was like, what? and then I remember when I told both of them together, like, okay, like they were like, oh, are you sure? And then everything. And then at first they would just not believe me. And it's like, I was like, no, I'm gonna start it. And then I remember we were having dinner also that time. And then yeah, now a year in later, my roommate, like she's like, I can't believe it's actually happening, Steph. Like she said that. It was great. And they're really proud that like, hey, this is such a real thing. Like she's doing it and stuff. And then when I set my parents were saying when I set my mind to something, that's really something that I drive as much energy, all the best that I can towards it. And then so after revealing that to them and they were in disbelief, I remind them all the time about their faces of how disbelief they were. They were like, is she serious? And then so because of
how
that,
did that make you feel getting all those reactions?
It's okay.
At the time, how did you feel about that?
It's okay. I know it was a wild idea. Like it was somewhat a crazy idea, to be honest, at the time. Because we were like ending college then. So yeah, but then honestly, it's mine. I didn't mind. I wasn't offended or anything because I knew it was a crazy idea. So it's like, okay, like yeah, I'm gonna do it. And yeah, so but I make fun of them na, oh yeah, you thought it wasn't gonna happen. Like you guys were so shocked. And they're like, no naman, we knew you could do it. It's just it was such a shocking thing. Like so yeah.
Because
so
they thought you were gonna go down a different path. Is that
something like that? Yes.
Yeah.
And then sorry, going back, I consulted after them. I consulted a lot of mental health professionals. Yeah. And admittingly, there were some who didn't think it was a good idea for sure. Like they were skeptical about it. And there are others that really supported it. So which is fair. Like I took the comments and considerations, refined the whole business model and everything, took considerations like to get both sides. And yeah, like I was able to get the support of certain mental health professionals, really appreciate the ones. And then I think one of them is still an empath today. So yeah, she's been there ever since. Like, so it's been amazing.
About how many people would you say you initially consulted with to get to your initial minimum viable product?
Okay. For a minimum viable product, it wasn't just people. It was for at least 10 mental health professionals before I even started the thing. But then I'm not sure if it's fair to say that this is the amount of people I consulted, because I think testing the market's also important for that minimum viable product. So for sure, just the idea of even starting a mental health company, it was like at least 10 mental health professionals before I was like, okay, I'm gonna start building like that. And for sure, some were like, I don't think it's a good idea. The others I think this is amazing. So like, but then I still recognized and validated the like. I tried to see why they were hesitant about it and did something about it. So it would be refining in the process. But until now, I don't think until now it's still refining, and it's accumulated to so many. So yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then how did you start building? Yeah. Walk us through those early days of building.
Yeah. So I did have a friend before, it wasn't just me. Like I asked some friends. Some said no. Like that was difficult. Like I think what a lot of people don't mention about the entrepreneurship space is that you will have a lot of people to ask them to come along with you, but a lot of people will leave also. So I remember I was so disheartened that I thought something was wrong with me. I had friends okay, like really great idea, but I can't stick around type of thing. Because I also learned that trust me, it's not really necessarily you as a person, but it could also be the situation. Like my other friend decided, okay, she wanted to go to the med school route. So for med school route, but I wanted the entrepreneurship route, and it's fair game naman. And then there's a friend who wanted to continue masters, but I still wanted to stick with empath. There was one that was going to travel abroad. So a lot of people come and go. And then that was disheartening at the start, but honestly, keep to it and know your why, because it's not for everyone for sure. And that's something that people have to recognize, that a lot of people will come and go, or people are just there for a certain time. So I think that's one of the highlights that I noticed also, that not a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, of how it can be quite lonely. But honestly, you'll eventually find your tribe. And I really love the empath team right now. But rest assured, it took quite a number of people coming in and out of the door as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Know your why and stick to it. Mm-mm. Yeah. And today, how would you articulate that why for you, for empath? What makes you keep going? Why do you do what you do, Steph?
So many things, Christine.
In one sentence, how would you summarize your why?
So hard. I think mixing it up with a bit of spirituality as well. I think to really be of service to others and to be of service to God. And fulfilling that personal purpose, because we were also created on this earth to serve higher being and to serve the children of God also. And it's to be able to fulfill that, your ultimate form of perfection in that sense of what you're designed to be. So fulfilling that purpose, yes.
So good. And I wanted to go back real quick to just your story, right? Of being in college and then choosing the entrepreneurial path. You mentioned, and I think that's definitely perhaps, how God has designed you. He designed you in a certain way, perhaps, to be more inclined toward entrepreneurship, which is wonderful. But I think in kind of more traditional Filipino culture, moving from college straight to entrepreneurship is still not very common, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, it's refreshing to hear when I hear of students moving straight into entrepreneurship from college. So I'm just curious, right? If you can explain, you mentioned your parents and your grandparents were business people already, but I don't know, were there things growing up that you knew you were more inclined toward entrepreneurship? What were those things, and what would you say prepared you for to be to move toward entrepreneurship straight out of school?
Oh, I think that's a really great question. At first, I thought business wasn't for me, to be honest. Like, I think because business can be quite toxic also for people. So I thought, okay, maybe that's not the best route for me. But looking back, I actually thought that I can be quite entrepreneurial. Honestly, it was the one of the key qualities of empathy and also being a creative thinker. So looking back, I remember I was 8 years old. I don't know if you remember Lilo and Stitch. You know Lilo and Stitch.
Yes,
There was a
so
there was a
cute.
there was a TV show also of Lilo and Stitch. I'm not yeah, so I remember so my lolo and my dad own businesses. One of their businesses is they own a beach resort. So for my lolo would always call me the great idea generator or the creative thinker. But I never really got it. He's just okay, Lolo's just being Lolo. As in like he'd always ask me, so what ideas do you think I can add?
Lolos have wisdom stuff. Lolos and Lolas.
That's true. Yeah. So he'd ask me, oh, what do you think would be really great to add at the beach resort? Like any ideas and everything. But I didn't know that he probably was referring to business ideas as well. So yeah, so when it comes to those business ideas, for example, going back to the story of Lilo and Stitch. So for Lilo and Stitch, I remember Nani, she had a rent shack. I'm not sure if you remember that. So she'd work in a rent shack and then people would pay and then she would give like the rents and stuff. And then I watched it and I was like, Lolo, I think it would be valuable, like wow, valuable. If this is 8, clearly remembered it. If we could have a rent shack. Because I noticed a lot of people would like to rent out for things but they don't have like surfboards or anything, and you can earn money from it also. So like it was something like that. And then he made a rent shack. So it was something a lot of people used. So it was like I guess an eye for that since I was like younger. Or when I make like my own little projects and then I would sell things, but I never realized it till later on, like, oh hey, wow, these were things that I think I was naturally in it, and then it helped when I was surrounded in an environment when it came to it. And I found marketing and sales so interesting. So a lot of my learnings actually came from YouTube videos and also books. So I remember once a mentor of mine asked, so who do you go to when you ask for entrepreneurship? And for sure, my circle, they're not entrepreneurs because we're like 24 and 23. Like we're still in trying to find life and trying to get our foot in the door in the whole professional space. So not many started businesses that I'm close with. And then yeah, so it's like honestly YouTube videos and books. So that was really my source, and my parents sometimes. So yeah, so it's just that's how I learn, and I guess that's a younger generation type of learning setup. Because I feel like I'm not as experienced or seasoned compared to the rest, so I need to double up on like my learning and really learning from other people's experiences, such as books, asking more people, and everything.
What's one book that's been really impactful for you as an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, so many. For sure, there's a classic ones like called The Lean Startup. Are you familiar with that? Yeah, it helped me it helped me realize to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. to not be tied. I think that was a very important realization and mantra, because a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up with the idea of being an entrepreneur, like the glamour behind it. But at the end, it's really grit, falling in love with the solution, with the problem, sorry, falling in love with the problem, not necessarily the solution. And I think that was me at the start, like, because it came from the problem I experienced. I think that really helped me. And also to realize that and be humble enough that your assumptions may not always be correct. So it's always important to have empathy and really know the market, test with the market, and continuously improve.
So good. So good. And it's so fitting because the name of your company is Empath. So it's like a constant reminder of this, and the importance of empathy.
Yes, definitely.
That's so good. That's so good. And so tell us today, right? We got a little glimpse into your early days of Empath, which was really inspiring. And tell us now, today, where is Empath and where are you going? What are you excited about looking ahead for Empath?
Yeah, so for Empath, currently we were able to be able to receive quite a number of traction. We were able to have certain partnerships, like for example, the one I mentioned that was with ABS-CBN Foundation, to do the psychological aid mission in Surigao. We're able to cater to hundreds of clients already, individual clients, and several partnerships with schools and companies and also nonprofits. So that's been amazing so far.
Yeah. How many lives have you been able to touch so far?
I think that's also hard to measure, to be honest, because it also includes the social media presence that we also have. I agree. For that, we have thousands of followers already there. And then we've had people message us about, thank you for this one post. I really needed it. Thank you so even that, this really changed my mindset with things. This helped me get out of a toxic relationship. So honestly, hopefully it's countless. So I guess a fair say would be thousands.
At this point.
Yeah. It's been an amazing experience, and moving forward, we're really just hoping to scale up and really expand nationwide as well. So yeah, that's the plan.
That is wonderful. And for people listening, how do they connect with Empath? How can they connect with you and your services?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.empathph.com, or you can check out our Instagram and Facebook or even Twitter social media handles at empath_ph. So actually, if you want, you can even contact me personally. I'm open also for conversations. People have just messaged me just because they've heard of Empath. So my Instagram is @_Steph Naval. So feel free to just reach out anytime.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll add those links to the notes. That's awesome. And Steph, you've shared so much already all throughout this conversation, but if you could maybe point to one key takeaway or word of encouragement for aspiring Filipino entrepreneurs, what would that word of encouragement be?
Ooh, for me, I think always keep two things in mind: grit and hope. So those were two main words that I also always keep in mind. And hope will keep you there. Grit will keep you going. So really keep going no matter what. And at the same time, have hope of that if despite no matter what, if you don't give up and everything, things will get better. And I think hope is something that's very important right now in our country. There's a lot of things happening and a lot of things going on. So keep going, fight through it, and keep up with a good fight, and always have hope.
So good. So good. Thank you so much, Steph, for being with us today. I hope you have a safe trip to Surigao, and we'll see you soon.